With just over a week until Australians go to the polls, federal electioneering has reached fever pitch. Politicians are trekking across Australia's states and territories spreading their campaign message. But in some of the most remote areas of the country, well off the beaten track, thousands of people have already cast their votes at mobile polling booths. It's an initiative that has the Australian Electoral Commission travelling over 1 million kilometres of the roughest terrain in the land. These songs and dances tell the long history of culture in Arnhem Land. The Red Flag dancers are performing at the Garma Festival on the Gove Peninsula, about 600 kilometres east of Darwin. It's in this rich cultural setting that the Australian Electoral Commission launched its remote polling tour. A relatively new tradition, taking voting booths to the people in the bush. And it's no easy task.
Over the 2-week period, we'll have 22 teams and roughly 60 staff out visiting 250 plus communities in the territory.
Mobile poll, it's critically important. The great majority of voters in Nagurrgurrba are in remote communities and therefore vote in mobile polling.
Well, I'll tell you, we're a damn sight closer than we were an hour ago.
Collecting votes across the Northern Territory has always been a massive task. Politicians here have been crossing rugged terrain to muster Indigenous votes since remote polling was introduced in 1984.
The people that are based in the large urban centres of Darwin and Alice Springs and the other towns don't fully appreciate how difficult it is. I have many memories of wet season storms. In fact, I think some of the scrutineers that came with me on one particular occasion returning from Nagurrgurrba vowed they'd never travel on wet season charter planes again.
Scrutineers are out in force at this remote polling booth in Gunbalanya.
Vote for Leo Abbott, number 1.
They're handing out how-to-vote cards for the two major parties, Labor and Country Liberal.
You vote for Warren, we're asking you to put number 1 in the bottom box.
For those smaller parties that can't afford to follow the remote polling trail, there's a political price to pay.
So that's all you have to do for the white one.
Having the organisation on the ground out in those communities is critically important. To, generally speaking, Indigenous people vote on the people they know the best and have known for a long time and trust and so on, perhaps much more so than people in the cities where we tend not to know each other very well.
Good morning. Are you coming in to vote?
Traditionally, remote communities have been fertile fields for the Labor Party.
There's still a very heavy bias in remote Aboriginal communities to the Labor Party, much more so than in a normal European larger urban centre. So I think you've got to recognise that fact, and it'll be probably many years before that changes.
Warren Snowden has held the seat of Lingiari for the ALP since 2001. But on the ground here in Gunbalanya today, there's also support for the CLP's candidate, Leo Abbott.
We had a feeling about Leo. He's Indigenous too. He's been from Central, and it's really important for us to vote for him.
At least in some communities and with some people, there are fairly high levels of resentment about aspects of the intervention, and some of that may rebound on Warren Snowden, I'm not sure.
It's not there, so you didn't vote last year.
In Gunbalanya, around 500 people are expected to vote. The importance of having a voice in the federal election isn't lost on the community, but it's a message that's not getting through to everyone.
We've got a bit of problem with them young people because some of them are not on the list, so they have to check their age, and there might be a first time for them to vote.
If somebody doesn't actually enrol, we technically don't know that they exist. So we have to do some very complex data matching and some work with the Australian Bureau of Statistics to identify how many people we believe should be in a community.
The Territory has the most incomplete rolls in the country, meaning a significant proportion of the community is locked out of the democratic process.
The AEC's estimated, I think, that up to 35,000 Territorians may not be on the roll. It's reasonable to guess that Most of them are predominantly Indigenous Territorians.
I'm not sure that I agree that they're disengaged. We're running an Indigenous electoral participation program now, and that's about raising awareness, about updating enrolment details where people might have fallen off because they have moved.
Indigenous voter education programs aren't new. A comprehensive campaign was launched in the 1960s after Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people achieved full voting rights. Australia's last voter education program was scrapped in 1996.
You'd have to suspect the damage has been done. I mean, that was a program that I understand was abolished by the Howard government, but you'd expect that a lot of that knowledge has faded out and is not likely to have been re-established in the very short time the scheme's been back in operation again. So that may well be feeding into the large number of people who are not on the rolls.
Out here at the base of the Arnhem Land Escarpment, the people of Gunbalanya have cast their vote.
Do you mind if I get yours?
The AEC has been impressed with the turnout, but says it will be even better next election once its new education campaign has had a chance to take hold.
We will cover as many communities as we can over the next 2 to 3 years, and so that by the time we come to the next federal election, we're confident that we will markedly increase participation rates in some of those remote communities. Thanks for voting today.